Adrian Vale died knowing exactly who killed him. Not the driver. Not the rain. Not the whiskey bottle rolling across the passenger seat. Those were just the final details. The people who actually killed him were sitting in heated penthouses and executive offices, pretending they'd never known him. By the time his car smashed through the guardrail outside Manhattan, Adrian had already lost everything that mattered: his company, his reputation, his marriage. Even his own name had become toxic in business circles. And the worst part? Most of it started with one meeting, one decision, one man he trusted more than anyone else. As the car spiraled toward black Atlantic water, Adrian remembered Marcus Hale smiling across a conference table years earlier. That calm smile, that reassuring voice, the moment he unknowingly signed away his future. Then, impact. Darkness swallowed everything, and Adrian thought that was the end. It wasn't. The next sound he heard was a keyboard clacking nearby. Then, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Then, someone laughing in the distance. Adrian's eyes snapped open. He jerked upright so violently his chair nearly tipped backward. Cold coffee sat beside his monitor. A half-finished spreadsheet glowed on screen. The office around him buzzed with tired employees and stale air conditioning. For several seconds, his brain refused to process what he was seeing, because he knew this office, knew this exact day. Slowly, his eyes drifted toward the bottom corner of the monitor. April 3rd, 2016. His pulse stopped cold. No, that wasn't possible. He grabbed the edge of the desk hard enough to whiten his knuckles. 10 years earlier, somehow, impossibly, he was back. Back before the betrayal, back before the collapse, back before they buried him alive in the business world. And then the truly horrifying realization hit him. Today was the day everything first went wrong. Adrian? A voice cut through the panic. He looked up. Rachel Kim stood beside his cubicle, holding a blue investor folder against her chest. Younger. Alive. Adrian stared at her like he'd seen a ghost. Because in his first life, Rachel didn't survive long enough to see 35. After Vadra collapsed, she spiraled hard. Debt, pills, depression. 3 years later, she overdosed alone in a Jersey apartment while former coworkers posted motivational quotes on LinkedIn. Adrian attended the funeral by himself. Now she stood in front of him again, confused by his expression. "You okay?" she asked carefully. Adrian realized he hadn't answered. He forced air into his lungs. "Yeah," he muttered, but his voice sounded wrong, distant. Rachel frowned. "You look like you saw a body, if only she knew." She handed him the folder. "Marcus wants everyone in conference room B." The name hit like a knife between the ribs. Marcus Hale, mentor, CEO, father figure, executioner. The man who built Adrian into a weapon, then pointed that weapon at him. Adrian slowly stood, and for the first time in 10 years, fear returned. Not fear of failure, fear of becoming the same man again. Conference room B looked exactly as Adrian remembered. The cracked projector remote, the cheap bottled water, the executives pretending confidence while the company quietly bled money underneath them. At the front of the room stood Marcus Hale. Perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect control. 10 years ago, Adrian thought Marcus was the smartest man he'd ever met. Now he understood something much uglier. Marcus wasn't brilliant because he understood business. Marcus was brilliant because he understood people. Their greed, their insecurity, their desperation to feel chosen. And Marcus knew exactly how to use all three. "We need expansion," Marcus announced calmly. The screen behind him flashed aggressive growth projections. Retail logistics, national scaling, debt-backed acceleration, the exact strategy that eventually destroyed the company. Adrian's stomach tightened. He remembered this presentation, remembered admiring it, believing in it, following it straight into ruin. Marcus clicked to the next slide. "If we move now," he continued, "we dominate the market before competitors react." Several executives nodded immediately, not because they agreed, because Marcus made disagreement feel dangerous. Adrian noticed things now he'd missed in his old life. The nervous glances, the hesitation before applause, the exhaustion behind forced enthusiasm. This wasn't leadership. It was pressure disguised as inspiration. "Thoughts?" Marcus asked. Silence. Nobody wanted to risk sounding negative. Nobody wanted to become visible. Adrian knew he should stay quiet too. But then Marcus said the sentence that destroyed his first life. "Caution kills momentum." And something inside Adrian snapped. Overexpansion kills companies faster. The room froze. Every head turned toward him. Even Marcus paused. Adrian immediately regretted speaking. Not because he was wrong, because he just made himself noticeable. And Marcus Hale never ignored unpredictable people. Marcus slowly tilted his head. You disagree? Adrian kept his face neutral even as his heartbeat pounded. If infrastructure costs stay unstable, he said carefully, outside financing becomes unavoidable. A few executives exchanged uncomfortable looks. Marcus studied Adrian for several long seconds, then smiled. That smile, smooth, calm, deadly. That's an intelligent observation. Most people in the room heard praise. Adrian heard danger, because Marcus only complimented people he intended to control or eliminate. That night, Adrian sat alone in his apartment staring at the ceiling until sunrise, because now came the real problem. He knew the future. But future knowledge wasn't power. Not yet. People imagined second chances like fantasies. Win the lottery, buy Bitcoin, become rich instantly. Reality was uglier. One wrong move could still destroy him. If he changed events too aggressively, people would notice. If he stayed passive, history would repeat itself. And the scariest part, some small piece of him still wanted Marcus's approval. Even after everything. Trauma worked like that. Adrian hated himself for it. Over the next few weeks, he tested the timeline carefully, and what he discovered terrified him. History was still moving, almost exactly the same way. Employees quit on the same dates. Meetings unfolded the same way. Arguments repeated almost word for word. Then Derek Liu got fired. Thursday morning, 11:17 a.m. Exactly like before. Adrian watched Derek carry a cardboard box through the office while coworkers pretended not to look. A chill crawled down his spine. The future wasn't erased. It was waiting. And unless he actively changed something, everything would happen again. So Adrian stopped thinking like a victim and started thinking like a survivor. The first thing he changed wasn't business. It was himself. In his old life, stress slowly poisoned him. Alcohol became routine. Sleep disappeared. Work consumed every relationship he had. He called it ambition back then. Now he recognized it for what it really was. Self-destruction with expensive branding. So he stopped. No drinking. No all-night office worship. No begging executives for validation. Coworkers noticed immediately. You're skipping Marcus's dinner? Rachel asked one evening. You used to fight for invitations. Adrian shut down his laptop calmly. That was before I realized something. What? The people chasing power the hardest usually have the least control over themselves. Rachel stared at him. Who the hell are you lately? Adrian almost answered honestly. A dead man. Instead, he just smiled faintly and left. Months passed, quietly, strategically. Adrian stopped trying to climb the company ladder publicly. Instead, he built leverage privately. He studied upcoming market shifts he remembered from his first life, regional warehouse shortages, supply chain disruptions, automation bottlenecks. Not enough to become instantly rich, but enough to move early. Very early. While everyone else chased flashy tech valuations, Adrian bought overlooked infrastructure assets through small shell companies, boring businesses, storage facilities, freight software, regional transport contracts. Nothing glamorous. That was the point. Nobody notices foundations until entire industries depend on them. Meanwhile, Vader continued sprinting toward disaster, and Marcus kept making the same mistakes. Because powerful people rarely believe consequences apply to them until it's too late. Then Adrian discovered something he hadn't expected. Changing the future had a cost, because every smart move he made pulled him closer to Marcus's attention again, and Marcus had finally started watching him. One evening, Adrian returned to his desk and found Marcus sitting there casually, waiting. Employees nearby suddenly became very interested in their monitors. Marcus smiled faintly. You've changed. Adrian stayed calm. So have company projections. Marcus ignored the jab. You stopped chasing recognition. Recognition is expensive. That answer made Marcus's expression shift slightly. Interest. Real interest, and that was dangerous. Marcus stood slowly. You know why most ambitious people fail? Adrian already knew the speech. He'd heard it 10 years earlier. They want success too quickly, Marcus said. No, Adrian replied quietly. They want it visibly. For the first time in years, Marcus looked genuinely surprised, and Adrian realized something unsettling. He wasn't just changing the timeline anymore. He was becoming someone Marcus no longer understood. Then came the breach, Or rather, the breach that never happened. In Adrian's first life, a small ignored cybersecurity warning eventually exploded into a catastrophic data leak that crippled the company. This time, Adrian anonymously sent the files directly to regulators before Marcus could bury them. Quietly, carefully, no fingerprints. 2 months later, the vulnerability got patched. The disaster disappeared, and suddenly the timeline shifted harder than ever before. Investors grew nervous earlier, expansion slowed, executives started turning against each other ahead of schedule. Tiny changes, massive consequences. Adrian finally understood the truth. He wasn't replaying history anymore. He was hunting it, and history was beginning to fight back. Then Elena Torres walked back into his life, and suddenly all his careful emotional control started cracking. In his previous life, Elena was the woman he almost married before ambition destroyed them both. Back then, Adrian loved her selfishly. Every conversation became about work. Every promise became conditional. Every vulnerable moment got postponed until after success. But success never ends. Neither does obsession. This time, things were different immediately, because Adrian no longer needed to prove he mattered every second of the day, which confused Elena more than attracted her at first. "You barely talk about yourself," she observed during dinner in Chicago. "Most people do enough of that already." "That's not normal for startup executives." Adrian smirked slightly. "I'm trying not to be one anymore." But the closer they became, the more terrified Adrian grew, because losing a company once nearly destroyed him. Losing her twice might finish the job completely. By 2021, Adrian quietly controlled a growing logistics network worth hundreds of millions. Not publicly, not loudly. Quiet ownership, invisible leverage, exactly the kind of power Marcus once taught him to build. Ironically, Marcus had unknowingly created the man who would outlive him professionally. Meanwhile, Vader was collapsing from the inside. Debt pressure, executive infighting, cash flow problems hidden behind optimistic reporting. Adrian watched it unfold with cold patience. Then one night, his phone rang. Marcus Hale. After years of distance, Adrian stared at the screen before answering. "Dinner tomorrow," Marcus said. No greeting, no small talk, just control. Still trying to sound untouchable, but Adrian heard it immediately beneath Marcus's voice. Fear. And for the first time, their positions had reversed. The dinner felt less like a meeting, and more like two generals studying each other before war. Marcus looked older now. Not physically, internally. Like stress had finally started collecting its debt. "You've built something impressive," Marcus admitted. Adrian said nothing. Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Vader is exploring acquisition opportunities." There it was, the same trap as before, the same strategy that once handed investors control over Adrian's future. Except this time, Adrian understood every hidden clause before it was spoken aloud. "You need infrastructure," Adrian said calmly. Marcus smiled faintly. "We need scale." "No," Adrian replied. "You need survival." Silence. For several long seconds, neither man looked away. Then Marcus asked quietly, "When did you become this careful?" Adrian thought about the ocean, the crash, the funerals, the years spent drinking himself numb after losing everything. Then he answered softly, "The first time I trusted you." That landed harder than shouting ever could. Marcus's expression changed. Just for a second. Guilt. Real guilt. Then it vanished, buried beneath decades of executive instinct. 3 months later, Vader collapsed publicly. News outlets called it unexpected. Adrian almost laughed when he saw that word. Nothing about collapse is unexpected. People just ignore warning signs until consequences become impossible to hide. Investors fled. Executives resigned. Board members turned on each other overnight. And suddenly the same people who once worshipped Marcus Hale acted like they'd never believed in him at all. That was the moment Adrian finally understood corporate loyalty perfectly. It only exists during upward momentum. Marcus requested one final meeting. This time there was no expensive restaurant, no strategic performance. Just Marcus sitting alone in his office overlooking Manhattan while rain hit the windows behind him, exactly like the night Adrian died. "You could save the company," Marcus said quietly. Adrian remained standing. "Yes." "You won't." "No." Marcus stared at his whiskey glass for a long time, then finally asked the question that had haunted both of them for years. "Do you hate me?" Adrian expected anger to return, expected satisfaction. Instead, he felt something much stranger, Sadness. Because Marcus never understood the damage he caused until nobody remained beside him. Adrian looked out across the skyline. You know the worst part? Marcus said nothing. I spent years thinking you ruined my life. He paused. But eventually I realized something worse. Marcus slowly looked up. I helped you do it. The silence afterward felt enormous. Because deep down, both men knew it was true. 6 months later, Adrian acquired the remains of Vader during bankruptcy restructuring. Clean. Legal. Quiet. No revenge speech. No public humiliation. That surprised everyone most. Because mature revenge rarely looks emotional, it looks controlled. Rachel became COO of the rebuilt company, Elena led operations, and Adrian rebuilt the culture from the ground up. No fear-based leadership, no rewarding burnout, no executives turning employees into disposable machinery. At first, investors mocked the approach. Then profits tripled. Because fear creates short-term obedience, but stability creates longevity, and Adrian had already lived long enough to understand the difference. Years later, during a snowstorm overlooking the Hudson River, Elena found Adrian standing silently on their balcony. You disappeared again, she said softly, just thinking. About before? Adrian nodded once. The old life. The old death. The version of himself that chased validation until it consumed him alive. Elena stepped beside him, slipping her hand into his. Do you regret any of it? For a long moment, Adrian watched snow drift across the city lights, then finally answered, Yes. Elena stayed quiet, but losing everything taught me something success never could. What's that? Adrian looked out across the skyline that once destroyed him, and this time, his voice carried no anger at all. Some people survive failure, he paused. Others become human because of it.